What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Wise here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Phil Alves of DevSquad. And Phil, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And since this is all things SaaS we're going to talk about, I was thinking of what are some of the other cool SaaS interviews people should check out. I did one with Sujan Patel of Mailshake, and he was talking about how he grew it to, I think there were over 70,000 customers at this point. I had Pipedrive on when they were 10,000 customers. I think now they're over 100,000. So I guess SaaS is the way to go, right, Phil? And Kevin McCardle's interview talks about acquiring bootstrapped SaaS companies. That was an interesting one. That and many more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise25. At Rise25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships and partnerships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We are a easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. We do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution production. Kind of like, Phil, what you do with SaaS companies. You know, we call ourselves the magic elves who run in the background and make sure it looks easy for the host and they could just worry about doing the podcast, you know, building the relationship and running their business. So for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. And I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Phil Alves. He's a man on a mission. Basically, Phil, I guess you could say you help underdog SaaS founders compete against big tech, right? And Phil is the CEO and principal consultant at DevSquad. He's led the build of over 100 SaaS products for bootstrap founders and VC-funded startups, leading multiple clients to multi-million-dollar exits along the way. And he's paving the way for other up-and-coming SaaS founders. And DevSquad's bootstrapped, they're profitable. They're a 90-person boutique consulting firm that specializes in strategizing, designing, and developing SaaS products. And they've helped bootstrap founders, VC funded, big enterprises, even ADP, Box, and even the US ski team. So Phil, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tell people about DevSquad and what you do.
Yeah, so I think you did a great job telling people about DevSquad. We build SaaS products. So what I do in an organization the size that we are now, I spend most of my time with thinking big picture, helping our customers with a strategy. And I also spend a lot of my time building my own SaaS because from my own experience, I'm able to bring that over to our customers. So that's what I do. I help mentor our product managers, our developers. I see have our site open, but what we like to say it's that we are product level thinking. So when they hire us, they get the strategy, they get the design, they get the product experts, they get everything they need to build a successful SaaS product. We really specialize in building most B2B SaaS products, and we give each of our customers, if you go down a little bit, like a full squad that has developers, designers, and QAs, product managers, everyone they need. That's kind of like what that little part is showing over there. So yeah, that's kind of like DevSquad, and I love the work I do. I love going to meetings with the customers, talking about big picture strategy, and I love actually also building my own SaaS. So I can kind of like see what's working, what's not working, and I can bring that up to our customers.
Yeah, we'll talk about that, Phil, because I know you started a SaaS company, you sold it, now you started another one. But first of all, how did you get DevSquad? I mean, that seems like not an easy domain to get.
Oh yeah, I reach out to the people that own it and pay a little bit over $10,000 for it.
Yeah, it's not easy to get one that you can say and spell. So I love the domain DevSquad. Talk about your first SaaS company, from starting it, why you started it, what the idea was to, we'll talk a little bit about, selling it too.
Yeah, my first SaaS company was a total accident. So I was doing freelancer work, building custom software for people, and I was blogging at the same time with everything that I was learning, because I was learning to code back then. And what I would do, I write on my blog, and then I will write at other websites that will let me write. So I had published a bunch of tutorials on how to do stuff in programming. I didn't know at the time. I was doing SEO because I was pointing a lot of links back to my site, right? And so I was hired to build this one specific custom software, and I published on my blog. Hey, this is what I built. This is what it looks like, and that ranked number one in Google for the keyword, which was like a software related to direct sales in Brazil, where I'm originally from, so it was in Portuguese. So that blog post had like 400 comments. Everyone wanted something similar. At first, I had the brilliant idea of just like install the same custom software in like different servers for each of the customers. And then after I have 6 customers, and it was impossible to maintain and to give like when I changed something, I had to go and log in every single server. Again, that's many years ago. So then I started to research, and I learned what SaaS was. And then I turned that into a SaaS that then could support many customers. And I didn't have, when there was a new feature, it was all in one place. When there was a bug, it was only one place to fix. So that's how they started. And I grew that company to employees and hundreds of customers. And then I sold and I moved to the United States with that money.
So it sounds like early on, I'm wondering where people come to you at in their journey, right? At that point, you had kind of, I don't know if you had product market fit per se, but you definitely had a demand already, and people were wanting your stuff, and you had a minimum viable product to start with, right? Mm-hmm. What are you suggesting, and how are you consulting with the people coming to you, depending on the stage they're at?
Yeah, I think when you are like an industry expert and you know an industry very well, and you are trying to build like a B2B SaaS product, you have a better chance of being successful. Product market fit is very important, but if you know more about the market, you're going to do well. I think it depends a lot on how big you want to go. And that's where if you want it to be super big, product market fit might be harder. But if you're like in a B2B target space, a space that that's a little bit easier, because there's like basically 2 risks to take a SaaS to market. One, is there a market? And the second one is, can you build it? And I guess the third one is the execution. If there's a market and you build, how good is your build? And how good is your marketing, and how good is your sales, so you can actually sell that product? And that's how I think where everyone should start when you're thinking about building a product. Before you build an MVP, but my story, by accident, I found a market and I could build it. But there's better ways to do other than by accident. But you have to guarantee there's a market, and that's possible to build that solution.
Talk about DevStats for a second, and what the idea was behind that.
Yeah, so DevStats, it's a software to help development teams be high performing and don't get burned out. So running DevSquad, a company with almost 100 developers, it became very important to me to be able to help my own developers be productive, don't be burned out, and for us to understand when you're doing well, when you had roadblocks, and how to fix those roadblocks. And the first thing that we did is actually we went and bought a couple products in the space, and we ended up learning that none of the products actually was as good as you want it to be to solve the problem you're trying to solve. So I decided to build up my own. And again, that's an industry that I'm an expert. I'm a developer myself. I have been running development teams like for 15 plus years. So I understand what it's like to run a development team and to try to get a development team for high performing. And that's what my SaaS product is about. It's about giving the tools so engineer leaders and product leaders can help their developers be high performing.
Yeah. So in a sense, you were, really scratching your own itch. I mean, you have an issue and you solve it. Can you talk about, because there's a lot of companies, they start to develop something, at least at a basic level. Maybe you start using spreadsheets and other things, and they're thinking, Phil, that'd be cool. Like, we should turn this into a SaaS product, even if it's just so valuable internally for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what's the difference, and how should people think about an internal product they create? And then they're like, well, we should release this to the universe and make it commercially available.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of our customers at DevSquad, it's exactly that scenario. They either build something with like spreadsheets and a lot of Zapier and a lot of stuff, or they even hire a developer to build something for them. But that was built in a way that was not like SaaS ready. It was built specific for them, just for the user case. So when you're thinking about building something that's SaaS ready, the first thing is the onboarding experience. It has to be seamless. You have to think how I'm going to onboard the users. It can be too hard to do the setup. And then from there, you have to be flexible enough so people can customize for their own process. But it can be too flexible too, like, because the challenge here is really sometimes, let's say you have one kind of firm, but you go to build your SaaS, and then you want to build for 6 kinds of firms. You have to build just for the one use case first, because that will make so the customization is less and it's faster to go to market with that product.
Do you find, Phil, that even if someone's going to use it internally, but they really want it to be professional, will they still use you?
Yes. And also what we have many times, people are going to build version 1 because it's a great strategy. And they're going to do a soft launch using internally. And then after they use internally and they work out and they make sure things are like better, then they come and they make that public for other people. So that's actually a great way to soft launch a product. I do think if you don't plan on actually turning that into a SaaS, it's likely too expensive for you, unless you're very big. Like, there's very big companies that we work, like there are public companies or funded by big private equities. And at that point, they build their own kind of like internal SaaS, and they don't want to give to other people because it's their unfair advantage. And that happens too. But building a SaaS is expensive, and unless you are a big company or you're going to build to sell, it might get too expensive.
Yeah. What's the base someone should be at expectation? I'm sure it ranges a lot depending on what someone wants, but what's kind of the base of your, like, when you say expensive, some people may be thinking one amount and larger companies may be thinking a totally different amount. What would be kind of the base where someone should be at? I don't know if it's a revenue of that company, but I guess some people are funded or startups. What should they expect, at least at a base level, to get started?
Well, here's what I like to tell people. Software is never done. Like, some people have the mentality, I'm going to go build the software and it's going to be done in 6 months, or it's going to be done in 12 months. It's never going to be done. And your development cost is only going to go up. so there's sometimes people jump on call with me and they're like, are you trying to like convince me not to build this? No, I'm trying to be transparent with you. So it's never going to be done. It's just like, is it making money or it's not making money? It's at launch or is not launch. So when you think like how much is going to cost, you have to think, you have to be able to employ at least 2 developers full time for years to come. And you can do that hiring a firm like mine, and it's pretty much the same price of doing in-house, but you get everything around. Or you can go and get your own 2 developers full time. But building a full-blown SaaS product, you're going to need at least 2 developers to start. And as the product start to build and users start to use, you have to keep adding developers to keep staying ahead of your competition. And now there's this thing called micro SaaS, where you build just a little piece of software and you don't keep updating. But that's different. Like, when I'm talking about like actually a full-blown SaaS product, never going to be done, and be ready to spend in development for years. The only way that's done, it's if you're out of business. It's going to always be aligned in your P&L. Developers, With DevSquad, our customers on average stay with us 18 months. They're going to be with us 18 months. They're doing very well. And then they start bringing developers in-house. But the development didn't end in 18 months. That just meant that they felt good enough and they felt a good place that they want to start bringing their own developers too. And we have customers that are like, I don't want to go to the challenge of managing development teams, whatever. And they've been with us for 4 years and we're still their development team, you know?
Do you see the case, Phil, of where maybe someone starts building a team in-house of a couple of developers and they're like, it's really hard to find developers. It's hard to find good ones. It's hard to train them. It's hard to manage the whole process. Do you find that they have a couple in-house and then they use you to keep expanding the team?
Yes, that happens too. And so, in the way that we like to tell them, you're going to get a squad. That's the whole name of the company. We're going to come as a team, and you're going to be a separate team that's going to help you have a higher output, because that's how big companies scale too. Like everyone, let's talk about Mailshake, Sujan Patel. I really like his company. Everyone is not the same team at the size that he's right now. He has different squads inside his company that is taking care of different parts of the product. And that's how it works. So when you come on board, we're going to be a separate squad because we can move super quick that take care of part X or part Y of the product. And we're going to also show them how we work. And they're many times able to replicate that with their own internal team and start to use the best practices that we use. People usually start to use DevStats at the point with their internal team too. But yeah, we definitely have customers where we are an extension of their team.
We'll have to share DevStats with Sujan. Maybe he'd be a big customer for DevStats. We were chatting, Phil, before we hit record, and you said something very interesting, which is there's a lot of money to be made in boring businesses. So what did you mean by that?
Yes, I see on my own company, there's like a lot of boring niche because like what we see in the media, what we see, what's cool now, everything is about AI, and everyone thinks that if they're going to start a company, they have to start an AI company. Like just a couple of years ago, everyone wants to start the Uber of whatever, right? It was like, let's start the Uber of this, the Uber of this, the Uber of that. And that was the cool thing.
You see these trends, which is interesting. They're probably like, hey, by this idea, we want to do the Uber of fill in the blank, right? And now we want to do the AI of fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank. And the real money to be made, especially if you're bootstrap and if you're not raising hundreds of millions of dollars, it's into boring business. You know, like we have customers building software for car washes, for accountants, for financial advisors, for inventory management, like those more boring industry, fleet management. So it's pretty boring, but that's usually where the money is, and is where the investment's a lot lower. And so that's where I see a lot of people being very successful.
Talk about inventory management for a second. There was a company that you worked with that went from start to exit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was a very cool example. So the guy came to us, was his third or second business. He already had a couple exits, smaller exits, but he now wanted to build a software in a space that he knew very well because he was in retail before, and then he knew how complex it was to manage inventory in retail. And he was like, there were certain tools that I wish I had when I was running my previous business. So we helped him build those tools. He knew the conferences to go. He knew where the people were. Going back to where I was talking at the beginning, he understood the market. And then so he was able to grow his SaaS to a pretty good size. And then he exited that company and it was a great exit for him.
Any lessons to be learned or mistakes that you've seen with either when you exited or when you've seen some of your clients exit with lessons learned?
I guess the lessons learned after the exit, the customers after the exit, they're just go their way. They're happy. Thank you. Help me get rich.
I mean during the exit, like through the exit process of they're in discussions and, I don't know, from your experience, what were some of the challenges in that process or lessons?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not expert in exit M&A. I'm not part of the process. Usually the only part we do meet with their the people that are going to come and they're going to look at their code base. They're going to make sure it's all good. And every time that one of our customers went to an exit and they have an audit of the code that we wrote, they were like, this is very good. This is test driven. This is scalable. So like on the technology side, I could say build things that are easy to maintain and that in the context be okay in the audit. But I don't know much about like the whole process of like getting many offers, decide on the LOI. I'm not expert in the area.
Yeah.
But I could talk about the lessons that I see people right before and when they start to scale. And it's kind of like related to what we were talking about, the boring business. Like I see companies going too quick after the next hype. Like, oh, the next technology, the next hype, I have to do this, I have to do that. And then they put millions of dollars into chasing a hype where that money could be spent on growing their business that they already have. I actually have seen more companies go out of business, lost a lot of revenue, lost 50% of revenue because of chasing a hype. Then I saw companies go out of business because they didn't develop fast enough. We're all too afraid of falling behind and that we go the other way around. I mean, I saw when we work with our VC fund companies, multiple CEOs get fired because their vision was like, oh, you have to chase the hype, and they don't chase growth. So that's kind of like the lesson. I think we have to really be careful with the shine object syndrome. You're more likely to fail because of that than because you failed to develop and to adapt because you got outdated. But we're all so afraid of being outdated, you know.
What have you seen as far as people striking a balance between the, innovation? Like people don't want to be left behind, right? So like innovate, but then you kind of lose focus sometimes on what's growing currently. How do you, and I know, Google has things where they let people work on a certain percentage of time on separate things. What, in your experience, have you seen as a good balance between, okay, we should probably look to see about this new stuff and the innovation that's going on, but stay focused on what is working now?
That's very challenge to strike that balance. And that's why we see founders get replaced with CEOs. Let's look at Apple, for example. When Steve Jobs was there was a lot of innovation. The products kept getting better. He died, and then we have Tim Cook. There's zero innovation since then on Apple, but they grew so much and they made so much money because that's just different skills. It's the person that capitalize and the person that innovate. And I think you have to see which stage am I? Am I in the stage to capitalize or am I in the stage to innovate? And maybe if your innovation is already going, you have to stop kind of like going in circles. Okay, I'm going to innovate again. I'm going to innovate again. And you have to realize I'm in the space where I have to really double down on this thing that I already figured out, on this market that I'm already good at. But that's the reason why founders get fired, because founders find pleasure in like keep innovating, like and keep taking big risks. And you have to keep developing, and myself, I think even in my own company, as I keep growing, there's probably going to be a size that I'm not going to be the right leader for, because the bigger the company, the less risk you should take. That's just the reality.
We talked about a startup. Phil went from 0 8-figure exit. Let's talk about VC, right? You've helped people go from idea to Series A, and what you did with that. I think there was one in the dental space.
Yeah, so they first raise like a seed round with family and friends, and they decide they would focus on what they knew. They knew the space well. They knew what the dentists want, and they would outsource development. And I think here I would like to talk about like a myth that you need a technical founder. That's not true at all. I have seen a lot of companies make a lot of money without a technical founder. Because what matters, it's your knowledge of the market, your knowledge of the industry. Can you sell? So the specific company, the founders, They were not technical, but they were very good salespeople. They were very good marketing people. So they left development for us and they went and sold the product. And they sold the hell out of the product a lot. We kept moving quick. We kept developing and kept working very closely with them. And at some point, it made sense for them to raise Series A. They raised a bunch of money. And then with VC fund, like especially after you raise Series A, most likely they're going to tell you, hey, that's okay that you start with a outsourced development partner, but you should bring your in-house team now. And that's what happened. And we have done that same journey multiple times with multiple customers that, again, went from idea all the way to Series A. And even customers, sometimes they fund the first version and then they raise Series A. Others were able to raise even a seed round. Unfortunately, investors today still, a lot of them have the mentality, you don't have a technical founder, you're not going to make it, so I'm not going to give you money. But that's not true of what I see in the market. I don't think you are required to be technical to launch a very successful product. Actually, technology nowadays is not a big risk anymore in building B2B SaaS products. The risks are others. Used to be like 20 years ago when people were building Google, that was a huge risk of technology, but technology is not a risk anymore, and that can totally be outsourced for a competent development partner.
What are some mistakes people make when they're creating a SaaS business?
Oh, too many. That's normal. I think mistakes are part of the process, but maybe there's too many features on version 1. That's one, and then not all the features are great. Their vision is big, but they don't realize that they have to build a tool before they build a platform. That's a big mistake. Another mistake I see is overcomplicating and over-engineering. I see that a lot. No, we're going to be huge. Here's the reality. Only 0.5% of every SaaS business is going to hit $10 million in revenue. And so until you get there, you should not worry about scalability. But people like spend all this time and money thinking about how they're going to scale and over-engineer everything from the actual software to their operations to their customer retention department. So over-engineering is definitely the number one mistake I see people making it.
You know, what are the most common things that the clients you work with or start to work with push back on, right? Because you've experienced, you've developed your own, you have hundreds of customers, but it doesn't matter what you say. Sometimes they may be like, Phil, we need to make this scalable. Like, what are the most common things they'll push back on, even though you're telling them, from my experience, I would not go down this road? What are some of those preconceived notions? What are people pushing back on you, even though you're telling them?
Yeah, we do get a lot of pushback. We need to build a bigger product to go to market. That's the number one pushback that we get. And you're like, no, we don't. We can figure out something that's going to add a value right now, and we take that to market. Sometimes we get pushback on like our very simplistic approach to developing products and the technologies that we use, because they hear in the news that technology X or Y is the best, and it's our approach to not be beta testers of anybody. So we work with modern, well-established frameworks, and they're like, oh, we hear this thing that just come out yesterday is the best thing on earth. And we're like, well, so many technologies come and go. We stay where we believe is the best place that's going to be reliable for you. And to be honest, we are in a place where we really try to understand with the customers from the beginning if we can be in the same page so we can work together. And our customers appreciate the pushback, and they appreciate us helping them and being like real partners, not yes, man, because like I feel like there's a lot less value if we just do what they tell us to do. We're like coming as a consulting firm. I like to say we are not glorified staffing agents. If you go online to find developers, most companies are glorified staffing agents. We are an actual consulting firm, and you're going to consult, and you're going to push back, and you're going to tell what we think. And we might even tell you we are not a good fit for you if we really believe that the direction that you're going, it's not going to put your product in a better position.
You'll consult with them, but you'll also supply your in-house developers to work on it too.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. When you say well-established frameworks, what are some of the frameworks that you like or that you see?
We love to develop in Laravel in the back end and Vue.js on the front end.
Phil, I would love to hear your favorite softwares.
My favorite software. Okay,
Yeah.
I love Notion. I love PHP Storm. It's a thing that developers use. I love DevStats, my own product. I use all the time, so it's a very good product. Let me see what other products do I use every day. No, I think that Slack.
What else do you use? Yeah, internally with the team.
Slack's a very good product. Really like Slack. So the CRM that we use here is HubSpot. I think it's a very good one. Very simplistic. So those are some of my favorite products.
I love it. I have one last question, Phil, and before I ask it, I want to just point people to check out DevSquad, DevSquad.com to learn more about what you're working on. Throughout your journey from starting, selling a SaaS company, starting, DevSquad and also DevStats, what's been a proud moment that sticks out for you?
Proud moment. I'm very proud that DevSquad, it's been growing since the beginning, and it's able to bring jobs back to Brazil, where I'm originally from. We have a team here in Utah where there's about 10 of us, where I am right now. But the majority of our team is in Brazil, and we really send millions of dollars back to Brazil every year, and jobs and giving opportunities for people that would be harder for them to have. We have a lot of people that start their career at DevSquad. And so it's something that I really like, and I find a lot of pleasure on seeing how we can change a lot of people's life and give the people their first jobs and their first opportunity. So that's something that I'm very proud of like being able to build a company, and a company that's stable. Of course, we never know about the future, but as hard as the market is right now, and with all the layoffs that happen in tech, DevSquad has not done a layoff. So it's super cool to be able to run a company that's stable, that's profitable, and that's helping so many people here in the United States, but also in the country where I'm originally from.
Phil, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone can check out DevSquad.com and DevStats.com to learn more, and we'll see everyone next time. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I feel like $100 grand.